We know that menopause comes with its share of challenges, to say the least, and navigating those symptoms can feel overwhelming. While hormone replacement therapy is a wonderful solution for many, it's not the right path for everyone. Whether you have a history of estrogen driven breast cancer, health concerns, or simply feel HRT isn't the right fit for you, you're not out of options. In fact, Mother Earth has been providing us with plant based medicine since the dawn of time and has natural solutions for virtually every menopausal symptom you can think of. To dive into this fascinating world of non-hormonal remedies, we're joined by someone who truly knows her stuff. Stacey Littlefield, master herbalist, holds a Master of Science in Herbal Medicine from the American College of Healthcare Sciences in Portland, Oregon. With over 20 years of experience in the natural products industry, Stacey has a deep passion for using natural medicines and nutritious foods to elevate health. She has been instrumental in formulating Redd Remedies, an award-winning product line celebrated for its purity, effectiveness, and innovative approach. Today, Stacey will guide us through the incredible power of herbs and natural solutions to help you thrive through menopause. So, welcome, Stacey, to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Well, and I was telling you before we started recording, this is the first time I've actually dedicated an entire episode to non-hormonal solutions to menopausal symptoms. And I think it's really because HRT is just one of these, it's such a misunderstood solution to menopause. And so I'm on a mission to educate women about hormone replacement therapy. But that doesn't mean that there isn't other solutions besides the HRT. And I have actually, since I was in my very early 20s, have been really, really interested in herbology. And I almost went into that field of work. And I always have said, like, I feel like I was, like a witch, not a witch, but like back like in a
I
past
get it.
life, right?
Yeah,
That I was like
yeah.
making potions up with herbs and I was like a medicine woman. Like I've
hmm
always felt this like connection to it of like all the things that Mother Earth gives us to help with so many things. And as I was saying in the intro, this has been around since the dawn of time. Mother Earth has literally supplied us with a solution to so many different ailments. And I just think it's such a cool thing.
It is. It's a really interesting thing. And I love plants. Obviously, I love herbal medicine. And there is so much that nature has to offer. We just got to find the right ones to use at the right time. And hopefully, that's where my expertise will come in with your audience.
Yeah, I'm like jealous of your education around being a master herbalist. I'm like, "Ah, I wish I was a master herbalist. It's never too late. It's never too
Nope.
late. And like I was reading all about you this morning, doing my homework,
hmm
and it just sounds like you really do know your stuff and the way you have gone about formulating different products, which we'll get to. We can talk about all the different things, but um, like you've really done the work and you're pulling in from Ayurvedic, from Chinese medicine, from Western medicine, and you've this ancient these ancient therapies, I guess you would say, you're
Yeah.
pulling it all together and kind of like cherry pick, like, okay, I'm going to take this from this and this from this. And so you have these products that have this wide variety of different sourced herbs from around the world, really.
Yeah, we don't, the every culture's like system of natural medicine has something to offer. And
Mhm.
so it's never been our philosophy to just kind of corner ourselves into one modality because they all have a place, they all have worth. And every culture has a system of natural medicine. So we can look at like botanicals that are used in traditional Chinese medicine, and we can look at the phytochemistry, we can look at the history and, the thinking behind the syndromes, and then we can look to Western European herbalism for related botanicals, things that are going to complement each other and work together instead of just looking at things like, oh, this one's really popular for this. We'll put that in there too. All of our ingredients are deliberate. They have a very specific purpose and a very specific goal that we're trying to accomplish in all of our formulas. And I think, mixing Western herbalism with Eastern herbalism is a good thing because that's, some of those systems like Ayurveda, they're thousands of years old. There's thousands of years of history and wisdom and knowledge that shouldn't be ignored.
No, exactly. And what's what I find is interesting about the world of herbalism is you have these companies that are just kind of throwing together like what they think is, oh, they've heard that this and this is really good for menopausal or for cycling women, and they're just like, let's dump it all into the supplement and put it out there. But herbs, they need to be respected, and I
Mhm.
feel like you have to be really careful because they can be very strong and can actually have harmful effects. And I recently was interviewing another woman who was telling me about black cohosh, which is one of the most popular herbals that we'll see in a menopausal supplement, and how it actually started to damage her liver when she was taking it. And I was like, oh, and I
Yeah,
hadn't heard
there
that.
yeah, there are lots of things that, people need to be mindful of with botanicals and, herbal medicine. So if a botanical has the potential to do positive, it also has the potential to do negative. People have allergies. There's a saying that, the dose makes the poison. So
Yeah.
you do need to know what you're using, and are you using the right plant part? Are you using the roots, or are you using the leaves? Because there are differences. But what people and, customers and consumers that are looking for botanical medicine, what they need to understand is that for black cohosh in particular,
Mhm.
um, it is 98% harvested from the wild. This is not a cultivated plant. These are plants that we're taking from Appalachia. It all comes from North America. So that part of the United States, the Carolinas, a little bit of Tennessee, a little bit of Virginia, they supply the world with black cohosh.
Oh,
Um, and sometimes people make mistakes. They harvest the wrong plant. So companies like ours need to do the due diligence to make sure that we're running the appropriate tests to make sure that the plant we intend to use is actually the plant that it is. So
mhm.
people need to know their brands, and they need to understand what their quality program is, because accidents happen on the ground. Unfortunately, some adulteration is purposeful and economically driven. So
Wow.
these issues happen in the supply chain. Um, Most botanicals are very, very safe to use, but there are always going to be outliers where it's not the right plant for them. And so there are reports of black cohosh causing a rise in liver enzymes and a
Yeah.
rise in liver issues. And so those things have been reported, but everyone needs to make sure they know who they're buying their botanicals from.
So is it not so much that it's black cohosh itself per se, or is it just how it's being formulated
It's
or
it
harvested?
exactly like there could have been
Mm.
adulteration with that product. It could have said it was black cohosh, but maybe it really wasn't.
Oh,
It Black cohosh is one. is a highly adulterated botanical. A lot of times in the supply chain, you'll find that the Chinese cousin of black cohosh is being sold as American black cohosh, and it is not. The Chinese cousin is a completely different plant. It has a different plant phytochemical profile, so they are not interchangeable. And when you don't have someone with expertise, an herbalist, looking in your supply chain, requesting the right testing to identify the botanicals that understands the plants, then stuff like that can happen. Some people may not even know that adulteration is an issue with black cohosh, but it
Hmm.
is. That's why, you got to know your brands. You have to
Hmm.
know who they are, where they're coming from, how they source their ingredients, and what is behind their quality program.
Hmm.
And good brands will be very transparent about what they're doing.
Yep.
If you don't find an explanation of what they're doing in their quality program, um, that's a red flag to me.
Yeah, same. And I think I'm in Canada actually, but my product line is mostly sold in the United States. So when I started putting stuff out there into the States, I realized very quickly that there was no rules and regulations. Like it was like anybody could just put any product out on the market. And I was like, what? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to go through this whole process of like getting it approved and this, It's like, nope. I was like, oh, that is so frightening. Like Canada, we're almost too strict. It takes years to get anything approved in order to sell it here. Like I know many people that are Canadian practitioners with supplements, and they're like, I'm not even bothering with Canada. I'm only going to sell in the United States. And they're still doing their due diligence, but
Hmm.
that is really scary. And I feel like that's such an important thing for the listeners to understand and hear because we're in that headspace of, well, let's just get it for as cheap as possible off of Amazon.
Yeah,
And you go
that's
on there and who knows, and you get all these fake reviews. I've heard all of them are fake now. And it's like, oh, this one has 20,000 reviews and says it's a 5-star product. Great, I'm going to buy it. You don't know what you're getting. So you want to look for third-party verification, heavy metal testing, like all of the, I don't know what else there is, but like quality checks that
yeah. Yeah,
should
you
be all well, not whatever you take into your body, you should be looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to make sure that companies are doing, identification tests on their ingredients because as I said, we are human beings. People make mistakes. There are sometimes these botanicals are harvested when there are no flowers and very few leaves. It is hard to identify a plant on the ground without some of those, characteristics to look at. So there
Mhm.
mistakes can be made there. And you're right. Everyone's looking for like the least expensive option. And I understand people have budgets. I get it. But the
Same.
most expensive product is the one that isn't real. And we know that there are issues on multiple online platforms based on testing that's been done where groups have bought products online, test them, and wouldn't you know, it isn't anything that they said it was. Or there's
Wow.
almost nothing that they say is supposed to be in there. So, botanicals, they cost something, like I think black cohosh is a good example. That's not the cheapest botanical to buy in the supply chain. If you find 60 capsules for $8, I'm telling you, there's something wrong. Like there's,
Red flag.
yeah. So, I mean, these things it's very labor intensive. These are people spending days in the mountains digging up these roots. I mean, so
Oh,
there aren't
interesting.
machines doing that. It's people. So,
Wow. I didn't know that about black
yeah,
cohosh, and I did not know that it came from the Appalachians.
yeah, it
That's really
does.
cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, there's many layers to perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms, but what I really want to dive into is the true what could be used as somewhat of a, there's nothing to replace hormone replacement therapy. I'll just make that clear.
Yeah.
But we can use herbals that act like estrogen in our body and do other things that will help to get rid of the symptoms of the hormonal loss that we're
Hmm.
experiencing. And then it's like that's in a group on its own. And then we have another group that is just that generally can help with some of these symptoms that happen, but that could happen to anybody at any age, like stress and bone loss. Not bone loss, we're going to put in the other category,
Yeah.
but stress, blood sugar management, things like this, immune system, that I feel like that has to kind of go into its own category because it has different herbals that can help support those things. But let's jump into, exactly how do phytoestrogens work in your world? Um, why are they even called a phytoestrogen and are they safe? Like there's a lot of talk that phytoestrogens aren't safe, like soy and
Right.
different products that, act like estrogen in the body.
Right. So there are three like main classes of phytoestrogens. You've got, and phytoestrogens are phytohormones. They're plant-based hormones. So you have sterols, which are steroid-like in nature. You have the coumarins, which include saponins and triterpene glycosides, which are the active constituents in black cohosh. And
Okay.
almost every plant has some level of phytoestrogen. Some have more than others.
Mm.
So let's, like soy, for example. So soy contains two fairly strong phytoestrogens. They have a stronger affinity for estrogenic activity than something like Dong Quai. So they all act and behave in different ways. So you have some phytoestrogens, like the ones from soy, that have either direct action on estrogen receptors, and even that is a little conflicting because you've got some research that shows there's action going on there. There is some kind of response, and then you have other research that shows, yeah, maybe not. So most phytoestrogens can either be agonists to those estrogen receptors
Which can
or
you explain what that means?
it means an agonist means it's like turning something on. It
Okay.
is you're agitating it, you're making it active. And there are other phytoestrogens that are antagonistic. So it's kind of slowing them down, calming them down. I call it like turning down the volume because
Hmm.
hormones are very loud chemical messengers, right? They're very powerful. So we're just going to turn down the volume. There are some botanicals that are both. And depending
Yeah.
on what the situation is, will depend on how it behaves in the body. So I don't think
So like an
any,
adaptogen,
yeah, yeah.
adaptogenic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
adaptogenic,
interesting. Yeah.
balancing, modulating. So, a lot of the research on the estrogenic activity of different herbs and phytoestrogens, you have a lot of it's animal based and in vitro. So, they're using very specific cell lines like MCF7, which they will use for the proliferation or estrogenic activity of certain plants. Others, like some lesser known botanicals like Cynantium wilfortii or Phlomis umbrosa, they've tested those plants on multiple cell lines to look at very, very specific genetic influence, like on the HER alpha or the HER beta genes. So they're going really deep to see, can someone with an estrogenic condition, is it safe for them to use
Hmm.
this? Does it really have estrogenic activity in proliferating the endometrial lining or causing a change in the weight or size or of the uterus? Is it acting on progesterone? Genes and turning those things on and off. So They all have a little bit different action. Now, what I'll say about soy in particular, we have these cultures in other parts of the world that have been around for thousands of years who have eaten very large amounts of soy historically. So I'm talking
Mhm.
about Asia. So in those countries, in Japan, Korea, China, India, um, if soy were such a horrible phytoestrogen that was dangerous, we would expect to see certain conditions occur there more frequently than they do here, right?
Mhm.
Um, but we don't see that. We don't see a higher incidence of breast cancer in Asia. We don't see a higher incidence of uterine fibroids in Asia. We don't see those problems in Asia the way that we see them in the United States. So I think it's too simplistic to dial that all down to a bean that they
Yeah.
consume. Now, eating soybeans as food is very different from taking a concentrated extract of just those phytoestrogens.
Right.
That is different. So when you do that and you take large amounts of concentrated phytoestrogens, then yeah, we see some estrogenic activity. But it is not the
Mhm.
same as eating tofu
Whole
or
food
eating
source.
soy. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, there's a lot of I've read such mixed things about that. And the most recent research that I've done, I feel like explained it a little bit more like you did, where it's that it can have a balancing effect.
Hmm.
Soy as well as things like flaxseed, which I do believe flaxseed is the number one phytoestrogenic food, is it not?
It is the
Mhm.
lignans. So the lignans in flaxseed are phytoestrogenic. They are phytoestrogens, and they actually have some research on flax lignans for breast health. So we know that they have more of a balancing, modulating effect on estrogen as opposed to just an amplifying effect on estrogen.
Is it that because maybe you don't know this, but is that because the plant phytoestrogens are acting typically more on the beta receptor rather than the alpha receptor?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
everyone that's listening, we've got two receptors for, well, two that we know of. I think there's actually three, but that they know of, but we'll say two main ones, alpha and beta. And alpha is exactly what it sounds like. It's like the stronger, and it's not a bad thing. We need alpha. That's great for bone proliferation. Like we
Hmm.
want some alpha in there. The beta is not as proliferative. And so it balances this out. Estradiol, for instance, sits equally on the beta and the alpha receptors. Estrone, which is more inflammatory, more proliferative, it primarily sits on the alpha. And then estriol, which is our weakest of the estrogens, sits on the beta receptor. So it's not proliferative or very, very minuscule amounts of proliferation. And so with plant estrogens, then, is what Stacey's saying, is most, is that fair to say? Most of the
Yes.
phytoestrogens then are activating that beta receptor, which can then give you a softer estrogen signaling. Is that, do you think that that's
Yeah.
appropriate to
Yeah, I
say?
think yeah. No, I would agree with that or just say, yeah, it turns the volume is low, your body still hears it, but it is not overpowering all of the other messages that are trying to be sent. So that's what you see with a lot of the plant-based phytoestrogens where it's the beta receptor that they're interacting with. Um, very, very, very limited. Um, interaction with the alpha receptor.
Yeah.
And again, balancing. It's either gonna turn it on or it's gonna turn the volume down a little bit, depending on the situation. Plants are really incredible that way. They kind of know what we need, even though we don't. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
so yeah.
Got a mind of their own. Oh, and is there some herbals that will signal on these estrogen receptors, these beta receptors, and then give us that estrogen-like signal in a much lesser degree than what HRT would or your own hormones, and much lesser degree than xenoestrogens. I just want to make that really clear
Yeah,
too,
they're
because I think that that kind of gets piled all together. And so people are like, any sort of estrogenic activity that something's giving us from the outside is like put into this like, oh, danger zone,
yeah.
like soy products and, but then that compared to synthetic perfume or plastics, that is a complete different story in the system.
Yeah, that is a category of its own. Those xenoestrogens, they are harmful. They have don't have benefits to the body. But phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens they are not like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be separated out. But you're right. You see estrogen and everyone's like, "Oh, it's bad. It's not good." But we just need to kind of take a step back and really kind of look at how they're behaving in the body.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and
And
there are many plants that have that activity with the beta receptor that can kind of um, help our bodies behave like the estrogen is there. It's not replacing the hormone. It's
mhm,
not changing the level of estrogen in your
no,
body.
right.
It's just helping your cells act like it's there.
Hmm. And so there's a difference between a phytoestrogen and then a herb, let's say, that could help balance a woman's hormones that's still cycling, that
Yes.
has a different activity. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
completely different activity.
Completely different.
Yeah,
Okay.
completely different.
Because so for one, well, I want to ask you about chasteberry, also known
Yep.
as Vitex. It is a really it's one of my favorites to use in cycling women to help their body to produce progesterone. But it's not acting like a phytoprogesterone. It's how does it do this?
Yeah, chaste berry has really interesting effects on the body and how it's working. So, chaste berry actually works on the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which is, those are parts of our brain and like the master controls for the endocrine system. And so, chaste berry has impact on multiple hormones, not just one. So, like chaste tree berry is very good for people that have excess prolactin or hyperprolactinemia, which we see in women that have PCOS. We see that sometimes. So, chaste tree berry can balance those levels of prolactin out. It also has an effect on progesterone. So it's not, and that has more to do with um, the dopamine system because
Oh,
chaste berry also has action on dopamine receptors, and it's part of the way that chaste berry is influencing hormones. So it's not that
oh.
this botanical is binding directly with receptors, it is influencing the endocrine system as a whole so that your ovaries are producing different amounts of hormones, as opposed to having direct action on receptors. So
So how does it
chaser,
help to build up the progesterone? Is it through the dopamine or
it
through the
is
lutein, like the brain?
both.
Okay. What?
Both.
Really?
Yeah. So it helps with metabolism of progesterone and other hormones, how they're metabolized and detoxified through the body. Some of what chaste tree berry does is on the dopamine system. That's why there is a small group of women, and I will say very small group of women who chaste tree berry is not a good match for them because it makes them agitated. And, that's its
Yeah.
influence on the dopamine system. So it's a little too much action for those women. And for those women, I would switch to something like Dong Quai, which doesn't have an effect on the dopamine system, but still
That is
has
fascinating.
influence. Yeah.
I didn't know that connection with that. That's so, because I think that that would explain why some women also get agitated when they take progesterone replacement therapy.
Yeah, it could. That I don't know
Yeah,
exactly,
no,
but
I'm going to
yeah,
look that up, Stacey. I
yeah.
will let you know. Very interesting. Because I'm one of those, like I can get, if I take too much progesterone, I can get agitated.
Hmm.
And so I wonder how that's influencing the dopamine centers in the brain or the receptors of
Yeah,
dopamine receptors. Anyways, I'm gonna, yeah,
yeah.
I'll look that up. So Dong Quai then, I see it in a lot of menopausal supplements. It's something that's been around for thousands of years, I would say,
Yep,
being used, right? In Chinese
yep.
medicine specifically. Tell me, is this a phytoestrogen?
There has been a lot of research done on Dong Quai, and very early on, it was thought to have estrogenic activity.
Hmm.
But there is more recent research to show that it does not. So it's interesting, in traditional Chinese medicine, they use Dong Quai for a lot of different syndromes that affect women specifically. So if that's PMS, menstrual cramps, in a regular cycle, they use Dong Quai as like a female tonic to help
Hmm.
balance and regulate the menstrual cycle. It is also a very common herb used in pain formulas because it relaxes smooth muscle tissue. So it's really good for abdominal pain, specifically menstrual cramps, because it's going to
Hmm.
help to relax the smooth muscle tissue of the uterus. And so it does have some influence in that regard. Does it build, bone mineral density? No, it doesn't have that kind of effect. So it's something that they don't use by itself because that's the other thing about traditional Chinese medicine. They never say take this one plant.
Right.
Formulas are 2 to 20 different things mixed together. So they use it for a very specific reason, and it is to help to nourish the uterus and invigorate the blood. So we're helping circulation. We're helping to pull nutrients to the uterus and into the abdomen specifically. So it's more tonic in the way that it works. I like Dong Quai for women who still have a cycle.
Okay, I was going to ask that
Because
next. Yeah.
that's like just like with chaste tree berry. Chaste tree
Yeah.
berry is great for women who still have cycles. That's where you see the most benefit for chaste tree berry. The same with Dong Quai. I wouldn't, that would not be a go-to for like menopausal women. I would choose other botanicals that do have some phytoestrogenic activity.
Okay. Oh, I love this. Just so you know, I'm learning so much already. So this is great. Um, okay. So Shatavari. This is so for
Ah,
those listening, the reason how I came across her company, Redd Remedies, that is it your company?
I'm the formulator. Our founder and
Okay.
owner is Dan Chapman, and he's
Okay.
our CEO too. So, yeah,
Got
I'm the
it. Okay.
formulator. Yeah.
You're the master formulator.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I had heard about Shatavari years ago from a naturopathic friend of mine who I actually interviewed on the podcast. And she said, oh, one of my favorite menopausal supplements to use is something called Shatavari. And I was like, why have I never heard of this before? And so on I went, researched it, and then tried to find it in a product.
Hmm.
Still to this day, it's one of the like something that I recommend often to women, but it is next to impossible to find in a product. Like I found one on Amazon that I will refer people to, and there was
Hmm.
one person that just within the last few years just started to have it in a product in Canada. But in the
Okay.
United States, you were one of the only people that had a product containing Shatavari, which made me want to get involved with you guys. And I was like, they've got Shatavari and it's like a quality product. And it's like, you've done all the testing and this is an incredible source. And it was mixed with all these other things, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Shatavari. And then you were the first person that I ever heard say, and this is, I didn't know this, is that it's the female's version of ashwagandha.
Yeah, and it is. I love
Amazing.
Shatavari. I've been waiting to use Shatavari in a formula because I love it. Yeah, I love it so much. It's such a great
Yeah.
botanical specifically for women. It is the female counterpart to ashwagandha in Ayurvedic medicine. So it is seen as the female tonic or the female, they call them rasayanas. So rasayanas rejuvenate and restore. They promote vitality in life, and they are said to protect the body from all disease. So their rasayanas are very similar to what we know as adaptogens. And so this particular adaptogen, Shatavari, does an incredible job at balancing women's hormones. So they use Shatavari for a lot of different women specific issues. They will use it to help normalize the menstrual cycle. So they will use it for younger, girls who've just started their periods and maybe they're a little rough, so just to get things balanced out. They use Shatavari as a galactagogue, so it induces the production of breast milk. So they will use it to help women with their breast milk supplies while they're nursing. They use it at the very end of a pregnancy to help with labor. And
Oh.
they also use it for menopausal women to help them move through that transition. So, Shatavari, it is not completely elucidated exactly what influence it has over estrogen receptors and whatnot.
Hmm.
But what we do know about Shatavari is that they have studies combining it with HRT in women who have had hysterectomies and oophorectomies. So it can be combined in that way. And we also know that Shatavari may have some influence on bone health and bone mineral density. So we just don't know exactly yet what it's doing because, unfortunately, all of the research money has gone towards ashwagandha. So we've got lots of research on ashwagandha, but that's like the male tonic in Ayurveda. They will use it a lot for testosterone levels and male vitality. Well, they've always had this female counterpart in Shatavari.
Yeah.
And I love it for its, adaptogenic properties. It is a wonderful liver protective. It is a neuroprotective, so it can help with cognitive function. It is an immune system modulator, so it helps to balance and strengthen the immune system. It has good influence over the digestive system to help make sure that, things aren't running too fast or too slow through the gut. It has a lot of different influences on the body, but it does a great job for women specifically.
So it's not a not classified as a phytoestrogen then.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
That could change
Yeah.
because the main constituents in Shatavari are saponins. So there
Okay.
could be some phytoestrogenic compounds in the root. So do you know what Shatavari means in English?
Well, is the
It,
I read that it was the from the asparagus plant, but I don't know if that was
yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's asparagus racemosa. So it is a in the asparagus family. So Shatavari translated into English means woman who possesses 100 husbands. It's very it's a very good botanical
That
for
would you think that would mean that it's not good for us because it'd be like having a hundred
right?
husbands.
It's also very good for women's libido. which is a
Oh,
which is a
so if she
an
had 100
issue.
husbands,
That's
this could
it.
help.
Yeah, so they use it for fertility and all kinds of things. But um, so I know, like for a
Wow.
lot of menopausal women, libido can be an issue where it just kind of,
Oh,
can
definitely.
fall off a cliff. And
Yeah.
so Shatavari is a great way to help support a healthy libido, particularly for menopausal women.
Oh my goodness. And maybe too, I have seen it used and I've used it in my practice for women with polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Yes.
which is very androgenic. And
Yep.
it has been used to help with PCOS, maybe for the fertility piece, I'm thinking, and
Yeah.
just that nourishment.
Yeah, it so there aren't any like human clinical trials on Shatavari for PCOS, but they do use it in a lot of different issues for women to include like just general ovarian insufficiencies, irregular or absent menstrual cycles. They will use Shatavari to bring on menses in women who had a period and then lost their period, just to help, restore that balance and kind of get
Hmm.
things going again. So I'm excited. They are doing more research on Shatavari because I want to know what it's doing. I'm
Yeah,
into the mechanism of action and the influence on
same.
different genes. So I'm excited that more attention is being paid to Shatavari as opposed to just looking at ashwagandha.
Yeah. And I I like that it's been, at least in the research, it's been shown to be that you can use it with HRT and it's useful because some
Hmm.
phytoestrogens, if you use them with your HRT, they can sometimes not be a good mix
Right,
because they're going to compete for the receptors, and then you might get too much beta signaling and not enough of the alpha signaling. And so there's some things that they say you shouldn't mix together with your
right.
HRT, which
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know that.
There are a lot of especially the phytoestrogens that you're not going to just drop some red clover on top of your HRT because they will compete. And you may not get the effect that you're looking for, or reaching the goal that you want, with hormone balancing and
Mhm.
just the hormone replacement therapy to help manage menopausal symptoms. But Shatavari, it doesn't seem to be working that way. It's a little more nuanced and balancing, and it's not competing. And we do have human research to show that it can be done safely without issue. And there's also research specifically on Shatavari and different breast cancer lines. And we
I was
know
going to
that
ask
it
that.
it Shatavari does not influence the proliferation of different breast cancer cells. So
Oh,
it's okay for women to use that particular botanical if they have a family history or if they're concerned about any type of genetic factors that might run through their line. So.
so I would say it's not a phytoestrogen. It doesn't
Yeah,
sound
it,
like it
it
is.
doesn't it doesn't sound like it is.
No.
We'll find out more the more research they're doing, and I can tell you, you will be seeing more Shatavari products enter the market, at least here in the United States. Canada, I don't know what the approval like status is for Health Canada on Shatavari, but hopefully you'll be seeing more because they're paying a lot more attention to that botanical for women.
Yeah, it was one that I was actually going to get my daughter on because she's 17 and she still has somewhat irregular cycles where she'll sometimes go 35 days, other times she'll be 28 days. And
Hmm.
she said it got really light for a bit. And I was just like, okay, well, and I was trying to think, okay, well, what could I use to help her? And I just intuitively, I kept getting Shatavari.
Hmm.
And so
That'd be
you
a
use it
great
with
place to
cycling?
start.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
yeah. Okay.
yep. Yeah, it can definitely be used in that way. And it's a great place to start because of its wide influence on the body. So it's going to hit kind of
Hmm.
multiple, if it's related to cortisol levels and stress, Shatavari will have an impact. If it's related to something a little more hormonal in relation to like estrogen, progesterone, or even prolactin, it'll have a little bit of effect there. So,
Okay,
yeah.
that's good to know. Uh, what about then ashwagandha for if you're saying that it's kind of the female counterpart,
Mhm.
should women in menopause and perimenopause be using ashwagandha? Ashwagandha is one of my all-time favorites, so I really hope you say I can use it.
Oh yeah, I love ashwagandha. I think
Okay.
ashwagandha is great. But it's not the only herb that Ayurveda has to offer. I like ashwagandha for stress
Hmm.
specifically, and I like ashwagandha for women who may have a little low thyroid function because
Hmm.
ashwagandha influences thyroid hormones. Um, but, so you can use it during perimenopause and menopause. There's no harm in doing that. I just think Shatavari is going to have a better influence on those female specific hormones.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And with ashwagandha, there's two different ways that is out there on the market. One of them most of them are just the root, I think,
Yes.
right? And then
Yep.
there is some that will contain the root and the plant. So
Yep.
what's your take on that? Like, do you feel like we should be using the whole plant?
Well, the whole plant is used traditionally now,
Hmm.
so it's not just the roots that are used, but the different plant parts are used in different ways. So, like the leaves are commonly used topically. They have higher amounts of other constituents. So when you see extracts of just the root, that is, a very kind of traditional way for the adaptogenic properties, for the increase in vitality, the kind of restorative properties of ashwagandha. But then there are other patented extracts, and we use some of these too, that do include the whole plant because they are looking for a particular amount of withanolides. So the
Hmm.
root has a little bit lower percentage than the leaves. So they combine both to get a higher amount of withanolides. So those extracts in particular, if you use them at a higher dose, the whole plant extracts, those are better for men at high doses
Okay.
than using just the roots um, for for menopause or perimenopause or even like immune system function or stress reduction. So, there, especially with these patented extracts, it all gets very specific about what they're trying to accomplish and what
Okay.
their marker compound is. So, yeah.
Interesting. Because I
Yeah.
found that my own experiment with it was when it was just the root, it was in a much higher dose I found in capsules. So it
Hmm.
was like you needed more of it. It was like you'd find them in like 500, 600 milligram capsules.
Hmm.
Rather, when the whole plant was used, it was in 150 milligram capsules. And
Yeah, and
so
it's
less.
yeah, it was less, it takes less material to achieve that
Okay.
percentage of withanolides because they're using the root and the leaves to hit that certain percentage. Where, you do have some standardized root extracts, but if you're just doing like raw, like root powder, then you need to take grams of that a day. We're talking 3 to 5 grams, where these standardized extracts, you can take 150 milligrams and get a similar effect.
And so you guys use both the plant, you use the whole plant or just the
We
root?
use in one of our products, we use sensoril for a very
Yeah.
specific reason because sensoril has great studies on cortisol leveling and
Yes.
cortisol balancing, and that's what we wanted to achieve. So that's the extract that we use. And then we also use not a branded extract, but an extract of the root and the leaves in our thyroid strong formula because we want that extra influence on the thyroid gland. So, it's
Okay.
different extracts for different reasons.
Because I typically recommend sensoral ashwagandha.
Yeah.
I tell lady my patients and everything like look for sensoral ashwagandha. It's not this isn't a brand. This is a patented like
Yeah.
formulation of both the whole plant of ashwagandha. And
Yeah.
then it obviously we should also be looking for a smaller dose then for women in that. Would you say in that
Yeah.
150 or
Yeah,
less?
150 to 300 milligrams is a
Okay.
good dose for women. If you want to add ashwagandha to your smoothies or something, I don't know. Ashwagandha has a very strong flavor, is what I'll say. Not pleasant, but it's there. Raw root powder is fine. But if you're looking for very specific influence over cortisol, or if you're using it for sleep or something like that, um, sensoril is a great raw material. So,
It really is. And once
yeah,
again, so just like Shatavari, sensory ashwagandha is extremely hard to find in a product. I have searched high and low, and I've literally found a couple of brands, including yours, that has sensory ashwagandha in it because I've personally found it to work better. Like
yeah,
I
and
noticed it. I
yeah, and
didn't notice
they
it with other ashwagandha.
Yeah, and you're gonna, find variability in the supply chain, but at least with the sensual ashwagandha and other, branded materials, they they have very, specific parameters that need to be met. And they also, if you're gonna use the sensual brand on your product, you have to use the doses that are therapeutic. So if you're gonna, say that it helps with stress, you have to use the amount that was shown. You can't use 10
Oh,
milligrams, or they
right.
won't let you put their brand name on your label. So it's you have better control over how the material's being used, what's being said about it, the right dosages when you see sensoril on the label.
Wow. I found it really helped. And I'm sure this is through the mechanism of how it helps with stress. But whenever I take sensory ashwagandha, it does help with PMS, but what it really helps with is sugar cravings for me.
Yeah, it can absolutely, and that's because a lot of sugar cravings is it's driven by cortisol.
Mhm.
Cortisol, part of its job is to tell us to put back everything we just burned, running for our lives, right? Because that's what people do when we're stressed now. We're burning lots of calories. We're not just sitting here looking at our phones, um, so cortisol has a huge influence over what kind of foods you're craving. It pushes you towards high sugar, high fat food because that's going to replace calories a lot faster than broccoli will. I mean, so that's that's part of its job is to tell us
There's a
to
reason why you don't
yeah.
want broccoli when you're
Yeah.
stressed.
Yep. Yeah.
I always joke about that. It's like, what woman, when she's highly stressed, hasn't been sleeping, is like, give me some broccoli and some meat and chicken breast.
Right, exactly.
Delicious. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. That's so funny. It's so true, though.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing that you guys have in your formula for menopausal women, that actually was, this is kind of funny because I saw that it was in the menopause supplement with the Shatavari.
Hmm.
And then I was researching different, so I can't remember what was it that I was looking at Shatavari? I can't remember, but I was looking at this research paper this morning, preparing for this. And lo and behold, in that research that they did, they used estrogen. And I was like, oh, that's what's in their product. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
so weird that I would find this in a paper. So explain what estrogen is and why is it good for menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
It's not a
So,
phytoestrogen combination, is
um,
it?
N- yes and no. I'm going to
Okay,
say yes
okay,
and no.
great.
So,
Okay.
Ester G100 is a blend of three Korean folk botanicals. So, these botanicals are also used in like northern Japan and northeastern China. So they have a history of use on their own. So, the three botanicals that are found in Ester G100, they don't have common names, so I'm going to throw out the Latin binomials. There's Cynanchum wolfortii, which is a member of the milkweed family, Phlomis umbrosa, which is a member of the sage family, and then Angelica gigas, which is a cousin to Dong Quai.
Oh.
Now, so it's also Angelica gigas is called Red Angelica or Korean Angelica. It is different from Dong Quai in that Angelica gigas has purple flowers. Dong Quai has white flowers. So they're a little bit different. They're related, but they're different. Now, another big difference between Dong Quai and Angelica gigas is that Angelica gigas contains a compound called dicursin, which is a coumarin, which is a phytoestrogen. So they have done a lot of research on this combination of botanicals. So it does not influence ER alpha or ER beta. It does not influence HER alpha or HER beta. The blend is also does not seem to be influencing the genes that help with estrogen expression. They are not exactly sure like what influence this blend has over the estrogen receptors, but we do know that it has influence over the hypothalamus, and that's part of the
Okay.
way it's helping with hot flashes.
Ah.
And it does have influence on bone mineral density. So it has to be doing something with estrogen
Mm-hmm.
and estrogen receptors, but they just don't know exactly what that is yet. But what we do know about estrogen 100 based on the human clinical trials is that it can help to alleviate up to 10 different symptoms of menopause, which makes
Mm-hmm.
it very different from black cohosh or red clover or even soy. Those are great for hot flashes and night sweats, but that's kind of where those stop. Ester G100 will help with hot flashes and night sweats, along with vaginal dryness,
Mm-hmm.
joint pain, vertigo, anxiety, and mood balance. It also helps with paresthesia. I don't know if you talk
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of women who have paresthesia when they're going through menopause, which is the numbness. It's the feeling
Mm-hmm.
you get when your foot falls asleep.
Yeah.
That's a menopausal symptom that
Yeah.
women
A client just
experience.
reached out
Yeah.
to me. She's like, I was going to go get checked for MS. I'm like, oh no, this is
Right.
a symptom of
Right.
estrogen
Or like,
deficiency.
you think I've got neuropathy. Like, what's wrong
Yeah.
with me? But so it helps with a lot of these other symptoms of menopause that black cohosh and red clover and soy don't seem to do much for. But
Mm-hmm.
Ester G100 absolutely hits all of these different menopausal
Mm-hmm.
symptoms. It is the only botanical blend that's been shown to improve vaginal dryness in
Mm-hmm.
menopausal women. So everything else is it's topical. Um, on the natural side. It's all topical based.
Yes.
Even the German version of Black Cohosh, which is called Remifemin, even their product for vaginal dryness, it's called Remifemin, but it doesn't contain any black cohosh. It's witch hazel and it's a topical. So it's that the fact that estrogen 100 has been studied in diverse populations in Asia, in India, in the Mid East, in the United States,
Yes.
we
Yeah,
get
it
a
did say
we
that.
it's that's good because um not every culture has the same menopausal symptoms
Mhm.
as women in North America. Like, my mother is Japanese. She never had a hot flash. She never had a
Mhm.
hot flash. She had really bad anxiety, though.
Mhm.
Really bad. And so, but she didn't have hot flashes. She didn't have those things. You don't really see that a lot in Asian women, but you see it more in North America and in Europe. But estrogen 100 will go beyond just hot flashes and night sweats. And the fact that it influences bone mineral density, that's a bonus too, because we know that that's a problem for menopausal and
Huge.
postmenopausal women.
Yeah. Yeah, I pulled the study up and it was actually a very well done study and it was double-blind, placebo-controlled. They first did it in South Korea and then they
Hmm.
replicated it in the United States, which was great. But yeah, they didn't see that estrogen went up or anything like that. It didn't have an effect on the actual hormone levels,
Right,
which I think is really important for women to also hear that. Like I always say, you can't diet, you can't supplement your way out of ovarian loss of those
right,
hormones, right?
right.
There isn't any supplement that's going to raise up your estrogen levels.
Exactly.
It can't happen. But we can get this signaling and these and reprieve from some of these symptoms with products like this that have estrogen in it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it says like hot flashes, night sweat, the paresthesia, insomnia, nervousness, melancholia. What's melancholia? Like
Depression.
yeah, depression.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what I thought. Vertigo, fatigue, rheumatic pain. So, we can get rheumatoid arthritis, pain, but just pain in the joints, right?
Hmm.
Vaginal dryness, and the placebo group that it over the placebo group,
Yeah.
that these things happen and it didn't happen in the placebo group. So, um, and no significant changes were observed in body weight, BMI, estradiol, FSH, liver enzymes, nothing. Um,
Yeah,
unlike HRT,
yeah. So
which
I
it can
mean,
affect.
it's a very efficacious botanical blend
Mm-hmm.
for menopause. It is a very safe botanical blend. In all of the human clinical trials they've done, there have been no adverse events. So no side effects. We call those things side effects. There were none. And no impact on liver enzymes, no impact on weight, no changes in BMI. We can see some of these things happen in women, who are really sensitive to hormone
Mm-hmm.
replacement therapy
Mm-hmm.
because there are different varying degrees of sensitivity. I mean,
Yes.
so it's different for every woman. So it's nice to see a botanical blend that's not black cohosh that
Mm.
has such a wide array of benefits on menopausal symptoms for women.
Yeah, and when I first started kind of getting to the late perimenopause, early transitional kind of getting closer to menopause, and I started getting all these hot flashes and night sweats, I didn't go straight to HRT. I was using progesterone, I had been using that for a while, but
Hmm.
I actually started with a menopause supplement and I found that it really helped for a long time with a lot of those symptoms. And
Yeah.
then I eventually switched off and went on to HRT, but I think it's a really good fit for even for women that do think that they want to do HRT, that this can still help support that transitional period of the perimenopause over to menopause, that you could use something like this to really help your own production of hormones to be balanced out and to be, get it's like you're squeezing the last little bit of those hormones
Yeah.
out and it's going to help to squeeze it.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah,
help to maximize,
right.
the potential of the hormones that are remaining because that's what's happening. Our estrogen levels are just they're doing this. It's natural. It's supposed to happen. And We cannot diet our way out of that. It's
Yeah,
just that's what
exactly.
happens. So, but there are these great botanicals that can help ease that transition so that we're
Hmm.
sleeping better and we're feeling more
Hmm.
comfortable with what's going on. And, not having to, wake up in the middle of the night and, dry off because you had such terrible night sweats.
That
So,
was me. That's why I was
yeah.
like, I was a horrible night sweater.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I've
love that. I love everything that you've put in there. And something that I was talking to you about before we started to air that I just want to touch in on is it's really hard to find a product for cycling or for midlife women and menopausal women that doesn't contain D-indole methane. And those that have been listening to me for a while, you know how I feel about that herb, and I think it's got its place. It's very powerful, and it can help with estrogen metabolism. But for women that are in their late perimenopausal years, it's not a good fit because it can lower your estrogen. And I see so many practitioners handing that out like candy. Like it's an automatic thing that you will be put on if you ever go for pellet therapy, testosterone
Mhm.
pellets. It's like immediately they give you DIM. And for menopausal women, you're going to be draining your estrogen even faster, which we know is the most important hormone for us to hold on to. And Redd Remedies is what, like, you guys have just so many pluses in my books. All these things that add up for me just make it so that I don't know. I'm just really happy I discovered you guys. But you don't have DIM in your product called Rhythm and Flow, which I think Rhythm and Flow, that one specifically would be really great for women in perimenopause. And then you don't have it in your menopause, your Meno-Wise supplement. You've got Estrogen and you've got Shatavari in that one.
Mhm.
And so I'm just really glad that it's not in there.
Yeah, I
So thank
mean,
you.
dim, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, and like you said, dim has its place. It
Yes.
helps with detoxification of hormones. If you are a younger woman, like in your 20s and 30s, and you're estrogen dominant,
Yeah,
it has a
great.
place.
Mhm.
It's a great ingredient for that. But as you said, when we're menopausal, we want as much of that estrogen as we can hold on to. So why would you take something that is going to help your body detoxify estrogen, like speed it up, make it more
Mhm.
efficient? So, I think, there's a very particular like menopausal woman that I would recommend that to. And it's if it's a woman who's struggling with, really serious health issues and female specific, um, you know, serious female specific challenges. But as a blanket ingredient for all menopausal women, there are better options
Yeah.
out there. So,
Yeah. And so before we go, I just want everybody to know what you guys do have. You have a very large line of supplements. And so, as I was saying before, we kind of have this category of there's things that are really specific for menopausal women, but you also have things like a joint formula that's really great that can help
mhm.
with osteoporosis and the development of that. You guys have sleep formulas, you've got stress formulas, you got brain formulas. So you actually hit on a number of different things that women can experience during this time, which is really great. So it's not just the
Yeah.
menopause supplement.
Yeah. Yeah, not just the menopause supplement. We do a lot of condition specific, um, botanical heavy supplements for people with different issues. So, yeah, they can go to our website and check all those out if they want to.
And we've got a coupon code, of course, for all the listeners. I made sure of that, which is KM10. Oh, if it's not KM10, it's KM15, but I'm going to have to go
Yeah,
back.
I think it's KM15. That's what
Thank you.
Katie
Yes, I
told me.
think it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought so. Okay, so
I said,
15% off
mhm.
your order with Redd Remedies. I'm going to link to it in the show notes, everybody. This has been fun. I've learned so much, and I wish I had your knowledge. I'm so envious of you, Stacey.
Well,
I love it.
I thank you for having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk about herbs and share my knowledge. And, in the future, I am open to
Yes,
visiting
for coming
again.
back on. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.